I'd like to call to order the January 11, 2016 meeting of the Dover City Council. Ask you to please rise and join the invocation by Reverend Theodore Henderson, followed by the pledge to our nation's flag led by Councilman Anderson.
Let us pray. Father, we take courage in your scriptures when you said, what are human beings, that you're mindful of them. You've made them a little lower than angels and crowned them with glory. You've given them dominion over your works in your hands and put them all under your feet. What an awesome responsibility that you have taken us, frail human beings, and that you have allowed us to do what is good and, yes, even what is bad we have done. But through it all, dear God, you have still trusted us, and you have showed us that love itself is more powerful than hate. As we are in this month to celebrate the birth yet of your past servant, Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., who chose peace and love, who chose a higher logic and a higher moral and a higher law and appeal to the nation through peace and love. We pray for that same sense of peace and love, because right now, dear God, we're on the precipice. And we want to be pulled from the edge. You've given us that dominion. You've given us that choice. And we pray that the choices that we make and that the city council make will be choices that are wise. And ones that are made that, irregardless of a man's color, but is dedicated to their character and to the heart that's within. Now be with every member of this city council. Let them keep that solemn obligation of their election focused, and even more focused during these times. Let us all look to the challenges in this city that we all love, and this country that we all love, and the dominion that you've given us over all, that we'll use it responsibly. No matter what our religious faith is, our creed, or any other artificial barrier that we put up to separate us. Let us look to love, because you created us all and you did not make a mistake. In your name we pray. Amen.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Gentlemen, you have before you this evening's agenda. Are there any additions or deletions to the agenda?
Mr. President, if there's no additions or deletions, I'll go ahead and make a motion to approve the agenda as presented.
Second.
Been moved by Councilman Hutchison and seconded by Councilman Neal to approve the agenda as presented. Is there any further discussion? All in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Now before you the consent agenda. Those items on the council agenda which are considered routine and non-controversial are marked with an asterisk and will be acted upon by a single roll call vote of the council. There will be no separate discussion of these items unless a member of council so requests, in which event the matter shall be removed from the consent agenda and considered a separate item. What is the pleasure of council? Councilman Lewis.
I'm requesting number 12A be removed.
Councilman Lewis requests 12A to be removed. Any other requests from council? I'll entertain a motion to accept the approval of the consent agenda as amended.
So moved.
Second.
Sorry, who?
Second.
Councilman Lewis moved and Councilman Anderson seconded. Is there any questions on the motion? Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Mr. Anderson?
Yes.
Mr. Sedler?
Yes.
Mr. Neal?
Yes.
Mr. Lewis?
Yes.
Mr. Cole?
Yes.
Mr. Husfeld?
Yes.
Mr. Hare?
Yes.
Mr. Hutchison?
Yes.
Mr. Slavin?
Yes, motion carries unanimously. Item number 2 is presentation for recognition of service for Mr. James P. Webster. for his service on the Public Advisory Committee of the Dover-Kent County Metropolitan Planning Organization from January 2007 through October 2015. I'd invite Mayor Christensen and Mr. Webster to the podium for the presentation. If you'd like to come down and take pictures, you're welcome to come down.
Could you sit in a chair so I don't look so shaky?
That's my job. You're welcome down here.
Somebody got a box or something here?
Kate, if you need to get a picture, you can come down on the floor.
Sit up on the rail.
No, I should use it. Kate, you can come on down.
Come on down.
Come on down here.
Where's the check? I thought there'd be a check.
It's in the back. Well, Jim, on behalf of the city of Dover, the mayor and council and staff, I'd like to present you with this cup that you can fill with an adult beverage after the meeting for your service to the MPO. And we will be looking for you to volunteer for another stint in the near future.
Well, 7 years, and this makes it all worth it. Really, did you find a replacement yet?
Yes,
Oh, good.
but not as good as you. You have 2 seconds to say something if you want.
2 seconds. Where's the check?
Thank you, Mr.
Thank you, Jim.
Item number 3 is a rezoning request for a public hearing, final reading of proposed ordinance number 2015-23. Rezoning of the property at 904, 910, 930, 950, 956, 970, 986, and 992 Watcoat Drive, owned by Watcoat Community Development, Inc. This property is currently zoned RG1, General Residence Zone, and subject to the COZ1, Corridor Overlay Zone. And the proposed zoning is RG2, General Residence Zone, and subject to the COZ1. The first reading of the proposed ordinance was accomplished during the council meeting of November 23rd, 2015. Copies of the proposed ordinance are available at the entrance of council chambers. First, I will entertain a motion to consider the final reading of the ordinance number 2015-23 by title only, which is simply to allow the waiving of the reading. A separate motion will be necessary for its adoption.
So moved.
Second.
Been moved by Councilman Neal and seconded by Councilman Cole to waive the reading of the ordinance. Is there any discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Ordinance number 2015-23, amending the zoning ordinance and zoning map of the city of Dover by changing the zoning designation of property located at 904, 910, 930, 950, 956, 970, 986, and 992 Watcoat Drive. Mrs. Townsend, would you please brief council on this issue?
Thank you, sir. This is a rezoning request for a property that is approximately 4.282 acres. It is currently zoned RG1, General Residence Zone, and subject to the COZ1 Corridor Overlay Zone. Under the proposed rezoning, it would be rezoned to RG2, General Residence Zone, still subject to the Corridor Overlay Zone. The subject property is the Watcoat Apartments, which is just south of the Watcoat United Methodist Church, fronting on Salisbury Road. The RG1 zone no longer allows apartments as a use within the zone. So the use as apartments is a non-conforming use. The property is being renovated under the low-income housing tax credit program. So that will allow for the existing apartments to be improved, renovated, and then, improve the quality of life in the area. The renovation could happen as a non-conforming use, but as part of the renovation, they plan to construct a community building for the use of the residents. And that is considered an expansion of a non-conforming use. Therefore, in order to be able to do that, they need to rezone the property. This would bring the use of the property in line with the current zoning ordinance. So from that perspective, it's definitely a benefit. And again, it would allow for the improvement of the property and the improvement of the living conditions within the apartments. This rezoning request did go to the Planning Commission on December 16th, 2015. There were no members of the public that spoke regarding the proposed rezoning. The Planning Commission unanimously recommended in favor of the rezoning as proposed, with 6 in favor and 3 members absent. With that, I can take any questions.
Questions for Mrs. Townsend? Seeing how there are no questions, I'll go ahead and declare the public hearing open. Is there anyone who would like to speak in favor of the proposed rezoning? In favor of the proposed rezoning? Come forward, sir. Good evening, sir.
Good evening.
You can give us your name and address for the record.
My name is Andrew L. Parker. I'm a resident of Whatcoat Village Apartment, 910 Whatcoat Drive, apartment number 32. I am rising to being supportive of the changes that are being proposed for renovation. The question that I guess we as residents have in the community there with the proposed changes, will under the RG2 rezoning, would there be a stipulation or change in the number of subsidized housing in the current community based on the new zoning from RG1 to RG2?
Mrs. Townsend, can you answer that question?
The zoning ordinance does not speak to that housing subsidy. That's addressed through the state program.
Okay.
So this does not affect that.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you so very much.
Thank you. Is there anyone else who would like to come forward and speak in favor of the proposed rezoning? In favor of the proposed rezoning? Is there anyone who would like to come forward to speak against the proposed rezoning? Anyone like to come forward to speak against the proposed rezoning? I'll declare the public hearing closed. What is the pleasure of council?
Move to accept the recommendation.
Second.
It's been moved by Councilman Hare and seconded by Councilman Neal to accept staff recommendation on the proposed rezoning. Is there any discussion? Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Mr. Anderson?
Yes.
Mr. Sedler?
Yes.
Mr. Neal?
Yes.
Mr. Lewis?
Yes.
Mr. Cole?
Yes.
Mr. Hosfeld?
Yes.
Mr. Hare?
Yes.
Mr. Hutchison?
Yes.
Mr. Flavor?
Yes, motion carries 9-0. Item number 4 is a public hearing, final reading of proposed ordinance 2015-20. The first reading of the proposed ordinance was accomplished during the council meeting of November 9, 2015. Copies are available at the entrance of the council chambers. Since this is an amendment to the zoning code, a public hearing is required. First, I'll entertain a motion to consider the final reading by title only, which is simply to allow the waiving of the reading. A separate motion is necessary for its adoption. What is the pleasure of council?
Move to accept for reading only.
Second.
Moved by Councilman Hare and seconded by Councilman Cole to waive the reading of the ordinance. Is there any discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Proposed ordinance 2015-20, amending Appendix B, zoning, Article 12, definitions. Mrs. Townsend.
Thank you. This is an amendment to the definitions within the Article 12 of the zoning ordinance. Particularly, it is a change to the one-family dwelling definition to be very clear that a one-family dwelling is a permanent dwelling unit placed on a permanent foundation, designed and intended for use by one family, and states that one-family dwellings shall not include manufactured homes or mobile homes, but shall include modular homes constructed to the standards of the city building codes. It also adds a definition for manufactured homes. So this is the first step in a series of changes that will be coming forward to address the issue of manufactured housing in the city of Dover and to update and thoroughly review the residential zones to ensure that they are providing the uses and the standards that the city wants today. There's been some change to the residential zones over time, but there's not been a thorough review of the residential zones. So this is something that is important. So again, this is the beginning of that multi-step process, but this would modify the definition of one-family dwelling and add a definition for manufactured home.
Are there any questions for Mrs. Townsend? I'll declare the public hearing open. Is there anyone who would like to come forward to speak in favor of the proposed amendment? In favor of the proposed amendment? Is there anyone who would care to come forward and speak against the proposed amendment? Speak against the proposed amendment? Seeing none, I'll declare the public hearing closed. What is the pleasure of council?
Move to accept the recommendation.
Second.
It's been moved by Councilman Hare and seconded by Councilman Hutchison to approve the suggested amendment. Is there any questions on the motion? Councilman Anderson.
Thank you, Mr. President. I will vote in favor of this, but I don't know, it seems to me that it's a clarification, but it seems to be the intent that we already had in the code. And I am a little disappointed that this was even necessary, but it is, so I'll favor it.
Any further discussion? Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Mr. Anderson?
Yes.
Mr. Sedler?
Yes.
Mr. Neal?
Yes.
Mr. Lewis?
Yes.
Mr. Cole?
Yes.
Mr. Hosfeld?
Yes.
Mr. Hare?
Yes.
Mr. Hutchison?
Yes.
Mr. Slavin?
Yes, motion carries as approved 9-0. Item number 5, tentative labor agreement with Fraternal Order of Police. This item was tabled during the meeting of December 14, 2015, and I would entertain a motion to lift it from the table.
So moved.
It's been moved by Councilman Hosfeld, seconded by Councilman Sudler to remove the item from the table. Any questions on the motion?
Yes, Mr. President.
Councilman Anderson.
Should we lift this from the table when there's an appeal of the FOIA request by Mr. Gunn? I mean, I'm just a little uncomfortable with that, considering it before that appeal is considered.
Mr. Anderson, I believe that's a separate matter, and I don't think that affects council's action on approving the agreement or disapproving the agreement.
Thank you.
Any further discussion?
I have a
Sorry,
question.
Councilman Lewis.
I have a question for Mr. Koenig. How will this labor agreement, if it is accepted by council?
Mr. Lewis, if I can ask, this is just, the motion, this is just to lift it off the
Okay,
table. and then we'll get
withdrawn
into
till,
it. Yeah.
withdrawn.
Any other comments? All in favor of the motion to lift the item off the table, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
No.
Motion carries 8-1. Mr. Koenig, I'd ask you to brief council on this item. Councilman Lewis, you'll be first up here.
Thank you.
Thank you, Council President Slavin. At the December meeting, Mr. Bowser, the city's labor negotiator or chief negotiator for the FOP successor agreement, briefed council on the highlights of the tentative agreement that was reached at the table between the city's negotiating team and the FOP. The tentative agreement has been ratified by the FOP, and as we indicated at the December 14th meeting, through the highlights, the changes are within the framework of the existing agreement, and a majority of the changes focus on the salary table, the benefits and compensation associated with employment as a Dover police officer. There were some changes to holidays. There were changes to overtime calculation in the sense that patrol officers will work or have the potential to work up to 84 hours on a 2-week basis before they will generate overtime payments. There were also changes to things like the physical fitness requirement that everybody take the physical fitness exam. There were some education assistance changes. There is also an incentive for Dover police officers to live within the incorporated municipal limits of the city of Dover. And those are the general changes to the tentative or to the actual labor agreement. I'd be happy to answer any specific questions that council members may have. In the intervening time since the December 14th meeting, I've met with at least one council member, Mr. Sedler, to talk about the tentative agreement terms. And to my knowledge, we have not received any additional written requests to answer either myself or Mr. Bowser. So Mr. Bowser is in the audience, and he and I are available to answer any other questions.
And Councilman Lewis, then Councilman Sudler, then Councilman Yates.
This question is to Mr. Koenig or Ms. Mitchell, whoever can answer it. My question is, how will this labor agreement, if accepted, affect the city budget? From your calculations, are we looking at a future tax increase? If so, how much?
Mr. Lewis, the calculation that we gave to council was the estimated cost to implement the salary portion of the tentative agreement is about $1.45 million over 3 years. There are savings that will be generated through healthcare cost sharing for new employees that are hired. There are savings that could potentially be generated if the chief implements the change from 80 to 84 hours for the officers on the patrol shift. And the answer, in short, is for the current fiscal year, the tax rate will remain the same. And for FY17 and FY18, the tax rate will be reviewed through the budget process. But the staff is committed to trying to keep all of the costs associated with the labor agreement within the existing tax structure. I can't make any promises, but that's the objective, is to keep it within the existing tax structure.
Thank you.
Councilman Sudler.
Yes, City Manager and Mr. Bowers, can you please explain to the audience and also City Council one more time in regards to any ordinance or anything pertaining to excessive force in the FOP contract, and whether or not the FOP contract does state anything in that regards for the record and for the audience?
Well, again, I think both Mr. Bowser and I would refer anybody to the existing agreement under the section of managerial rights. I read it at the last meeting.
I'd be glad to follow up on that if you'd like.
Mr. Bowser, if you can just state your name for those.
Oh, yes, William
the audience and
Bowser.
those watching
I
it.
served as chief negotiator for the city in connection with the collective bargaining with the FOP.
Thank
I made the presentation and highlighting the changes in the tentative agreement.
Can you speak up?
Yes, I'm sorry. I
So if you can
didn't want to get too.
microphone.
I didn't want to get too close. Should I tap it? Is that better? There were questions raised prior to my presentation regarding the collective bargaining agreement and this tentative collective bargaining agreement and the adoption and application of rules and regulations of the police department itself. Nothing in this contract prohibits or limits the chief of police from applying the department's rules and regulations, nothing at all. And in fact, specifically in Article 1.7 of the collective bargaining agreement, it provides that the chief of police has the exclusive right to discharge or discipline officers for violations of departmental rules and regulations. And specifically, Article 1.7 provides in pertinent part, and I'll just read it for the record, the pertinent part, that is, the management of the City of Dover Police Department and the direction of all department personnel, including the right to hire, assign, suspend, transfer, promote, discharge, or discipline for violation of the rules and regulations of the department duly promulgated, providing for such discipline and to maintain the discipline and efficiency of its members, is vested exclusively in the police chief. The article does provide, as it must, that the chief's authority cannot be in derogation of state law. In this regard, the chief's authority or the collective bargaining agreement could not violate the rights provided to an officer under the Police Officers' Bill of Rights, which has been under certain discussion in the prior meeting. So that's how that's handled with respect to the agreement.
Thank you very much, Council President. Thank you very much, Mr. Bowers.
Councilman Neal.
In other words, this is the same section of that agreement that was in place that the chief of police at that time sent the violation that he felt that Webster made against the rules to a grand jury. Is that correct?
Well, that's separate from this section. Section 1.7 deals with the right of the police chief to discipline the police force and has the authority to do so under the rules and regulations.
So in this case, this is what occurred. So at that point, he did everything possible to show that excessive force was not acceptable. The second thing is he also has to obey the state law. So any changes that we make must come from the state.
Certainly, any Dover ordinance or this collective bargaining agreement it must respect state law, and that's the Police Officers' Bill of Rights, and Section 1.7 does that, and I think I read that section.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other questions or comments from council? Councilman Anderson.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. President. I think we have something that is positive, of course, but I am concerned that we update the policies and procedures, and that would not be prohibited by the Officers' Bill of Rights to include, when we do that, excessive force that creates an injury as a dismissible offense, would it not? It wouldn't exclude that or prohibit that.
Well, I can't speak to the Policeman's Bill of Rights. I'm the labor negotiator, but the Rule 1.7 allows the Chief of Police to duly promulgate rules and procedures.
Thank you.
Yes.
Now, there was one reason why we were discussing updating the rules opposed to the contract is, Chief, did you believe that we would potentially, if we put in the contract, end up worse off than we are now than if we evaluate the rules?
This is what's called a broad management rights clause that empowers the chief to direct his or her, depending on the circumstance, police force, and to promulgate rules and regulations. And nothing in this contract impairs his right to do so. If to the extent that it was changed, it could be looked to limit that particular management rights clause. Does that answer your question, Councilman?
Thank you.
Thank you. Other questions or comments from council members? Thank you, Mr. Bowser. It was the pleasure of council. Sorry, Mr. Sutherland?
I move to accept staff recommendation and approve the FOP contract.
Second.
And moved by Councilman Sudler and seconded by Councilman Hosfeld to approve the tentative labor agreement with the Fraternal Order of Police. Is there any further discussion?
There is, Mr. President.
Councilman Anderson.
Thank you. Mr. President, I definitely want to vote for this agreement because it has a lot of good things to it. I think we definitely need to even out the pay for the lower ranks. I think we need to be competitive. I think there's a lot of good in this agreement that is going to make us more competitive for minority recruitment as well as recruitment of quality candidates in general. But we still do not have what was requested, and they're still in review for these changes. It's really torn because I want to support this agreement, but I am concerned that certain changes still haven't been made. It's like we always told to wait, always told to be patient. But there's a point in time where after 250 years, you wonder how much longer you're going to wait, how much longer there needs to be patience. I know that's politically incorrect to say, but someone has to say it. I am a conservative, Mr. President. I believe in the institutions of this country. I believe in the institutions that make this community great, and I'm supportive. But I am also a constitutionalist. I believe that first and foremost, we have to live with the Constitution, which limits government, because without limited government, there are no human rights, there is no freedom. Government has to be held on a short leash, and to do that, we have to respect the Fourth, the Fifth, the 14th Amendments of our Constitution. And if the state fails to do it, if the federal government fails to do it, then we who have taken an oath have to make sure that our local policies and procedures do it, because it is our government at a local level. And we have to make sure we fulfill our own oaths. I believe that we need to support our local police because they do a great job. You're going to hear more tonight of what they're doing in this community with the crime-based, with the statistics-based management, with the fact that instead of just looking for ways to get more equipment, to get more money for them, they're building our community. We have a great police force. We have 90-plus heroes, and I think we need to support them. And that's I believe that's not the issue. I just wish we had left this on the table while we continue this effort, because we need to make sure that everyone in this community knows that we believe in the Constitution of the United States and the constitutional rights of each and every person, by making sure that our policies and procedures are a model, not just equal to everybody else, not just approved, but a model and the leader in the first state, in the capital of the first state. That's what I believe, Mr. President, and that will explain my vote tonight.
Thank you. Any further comments from council? Councilman Hutchison.
President, thank you, and certainly to each and every one of you that are here tonight and expressed your views. I'd like to thank you, because your concerns are our concerns. I've lived in this community for a lifetime. I served this community 25 years as a police officer. I'm a retired chief of police with this city. I served 10 years as the mayor of this city. So I can assure you, each and every concern that you have raised is a concern that every member of council and the mayor and our police chief is concerned about. And I have all the faith that due process is what the mayor and the police chief is dealing with at this time. And I think it's extremely important that we allow that process to work. As far as this contract, I am a firm believer that this contract is the right thing to do for the right reasons. Our men and women who serve as the Dover police officers out every single day, day and night, taking care of your concerns, they need to be paid for what they do. The contract is separate from the issues and concerns that you are talking about here tonight. And I have all the faith that the mayor and police chief will deal with that. Thank you.
Other comments from council? Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Mr. Anderson?
No.
Mr. Sudler?
Yes.
Mr. Neal?
Yes.
Mr. Lewis?
No.
Mr. Cole?
Yes.
Mr. Hosfeld?
Yes.
Mr. Hare?
Yes.
Mr. Hutchison?
Yes.
Yes, motion carries 7-2. Item number 6 is violation of the dangerous building ordinance, property located at 1032 to 1058 South DuPont Highway, owned by BMDR LLC, 60-day progress report. Reminder, action taken during the regular council meeting of November 9th, 2015, that the property be repaired or demolished by July 1, 2016, and that progress reports be provided to council at meetings scheduled for January 11th, 2016. Mrs. Townsend, can you please brief us on the item?
Yes. If you've been by the property, and it has definitely improved, the the stockade fence was put in at the rear of the property where it abuts the residential lots. The northern building, which was not the subject of the dangerous building case, but which was in poor shape as well, has been demolished. That demolition has been complete. The construction fence is in place surrounding the site. Mr. McLeish came into our office last week, and while I wasn't able to talk to him, he did share with my staff that they have been working on the permits or the drawings for the building permit, and they expect to file the permit application within the next week or two. And I guess that's the main thing. They are working with one of the tenants that was in there to remove items from the tenant space so that they can work on the interior demolition that needs to happen to do the overall fit out. So they have held to the promises that they brought forward, and we will continue to work with them to monitor the progress.
Thank you, Mrs. Townsend. Any questions for Mrs. Townsend? It's the pleasure of council.
Move to accept the report. Second.
Moved by Councilman Harris, seconded by Councilman Sudler to accept the report of Mrs. Townsend. Any discussion of the motion? All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Item 6B is a violation of the dangerous building ordinance, property located at 2 South Queen Street, owned by KZ Forever LLC. As a reminder, action taken during special council meeting of December 9, 2015, was to have the property owner provide staff with estimates within 15 days to place the matter on the January 11th agenda for council discussion. Mrs. Townsend, would you please brief council on this item?
Yes, thank you. We did receive on December 23rd a copy of a structural engineering report. The structural inspection was performed by Charles McCullough. Attached to that, we also received on December 22nd two proposals and one receipt for work that was completed. We received a proposal from Bulldog Contracting, and then another one from J&C Builders. On January 8th, we received an updated proposal from J&C Builders. Our building inspector, Mike McGregor, and you can see in page 206 of your packet, reviewed the structural engineering report along with the code enforcement case and the proposals that were provided. And based on, and again, the email's in your packet, he believes that the structural engineering report is incomplete. It addresses sagging at the center of the floor area. The contractor discusses in his scope of work that all concrete footings are to be inspected for cracks, adequate attachment, scour, and spalling. The engineer did not mention even looking at any other foundation areas in his report. The proposal from Bulldog Contracting mentions install 2 by 12 by 16 treated lumber at rear foundation of the house and install 2 by 12 by 16 treated lumber at left side of the foundation of house. These areas were not discussed in the structural report at all. It is not clear if this is an attempt to repair a rotten sill plate or rim joist. The area should have been inspected by the engineer to determine if there is additional rot or termite damage or other structural members, such as joists or sill plates. The grade at the rear or west side of the building is sloped toward the building. Instead of shedding rainwater away from the building, it runs directly toward it. This is likely a contributing factor to rotten or termite damaged wood in this area. It is not mentioned in the report. The leaning chimney is not mentioned in the structural report at all. It may be that the engineer did not know the City of Dover case history report and only observed what he was asked. The asphalt siding, and I'll explain this a little bit. If you look at the Bulldog proposal, it indicates that cosmetically cover any exposed area of exterior shingle siding with shingles. So I had a discussion with the building inspector, and he did some research about the whole, when were asphalt shingles used as a wall cover, exterior wall covering in construction. So he says that the asphalt siding was used in the 1930s and 40s as a renovation alternative to painting weathered or rotted wood clapboards and covering deteriorated exterior walls of old homes. The materials may contain asbestos. The material is no longer available on the market. Nailing roof shingles over leaking, worn-out areas is not a proper repair to keep rainwater and moisture out of the building. The proper method of repair would be to remove and replace the siding. None of the proposals discuss the mold observed by the city inspector and noted in the case history. Moisture is probably entering the building through the deteriorated siding and causing the mold to grow. So when we look at the standard of repair, and I know the question, Mr. Hare, that you had asked was the cost of bringing the building into compliance with the code. The absolute minimum in our building codes for an existing building, if it exists and you're not planning major renovations, the absolute minimum, and this is what we use for our rental inspections and such, is the International Property Maintenance Code. The International Property Maintenance Code states in section 304.2, all exterior surfaces, including but not limited to doors, door and window frames, cornices, porches, trim, balconies, decks, and fences shall be maintained in good condition. Exterior wood surfaces other than decaying resistant woods shall be protected from the elements and decay by painting or other protective covering or treatment. Peeling, flaking, and chipped paint shall be eliminated and surfaces repainted. All siding and masonry joints, as well as those between the building envelope and the perimeter of the windows, doors, and skylights, shall be maintained weather-resistant and watertight. And then there's some other language that doesn't necessarily pertain to this. And then 304.6 states, all exterior walls shall be free from holes, breaks, and loose or rotting materials, and maintained weatherproof and properly surface coated where required to prevent deterioration. So, what we're looking at is a scope that doesn't even bring it to the standard of the International Property Maintenance Code. So staff maintains concerns.
Mr. Sutherland, I believe you recused yourself from this item the last time. You're going to recuse yourself from this one. Mr. Hare?
Another question I have. Does this house currently have a rental permit?
It does not.
So if someone was living in there,
It is not.
if someone was seen coming out of the place with the backpack and their bike and locking the door behind them,
That is not permitted.
I think we ought to have someone, check that.
Okay?
You know, I don't want to, I'm just saying if someone was seen, it was, because there has been activity in that house.
Okay.
And obviously, what was requested hasn't been done. And, so, I'm just asking that question, too.
Other questions for Mrs. Townsend? What is the pleasure of council?
Thank you, Mr.
Oh, I'm sorry, Councilman Anderson.
Thank you.
I'm not neglecting you, I'm just not looking over there.
That's good. I have a question, and that is, when I read the report of the inspector on one point, and yet I read the proposal and the cost estimate on the other point, they don't seem to add together. Like, for instance, the chimney is, in fact, in the report. These other items, was this report updated, or did the inspector miss what was in it?
When he talks about the chimney, he's talking specifically about that the structural engineering report does not address the chimney and does not address several aspects of the foundation. So his concern was that the structural engineering report was incomplete, and therefore the scope of work and the structural report didn't jive. There's also, if the scope of work is expected to be provided to obtain a building permit, there are no drawings that show how this work will be performed. So.
But we didn't ask for that. We
Right,
just asked for
right,
an
but-
estimate.
but
Because of
if-
the timeframe.
Right, but again, his concern is that, and I share the concern, that the structural report is incomplete and does not match the scope. So the scope in the proposals by the contractor doesn't indicate that there's been any structural inspection, so he can't determine that is sufficient. You know, we can't look at the proposals presented and determine that the building will be code compliant when the work is done. And that's part of the concern, because the structural report is incomplete. The proposal from Bulldog specifically only addresses patching holes in the siding, so it doesn't address the issue of being weather tight and watertight. There's mold inside the building, which is an indication that there's moisture getting in. So the scope of what has been provided does not meet the minimum of the code.
Now, are we changing the bar here from what we asked to be brought? What have the conversations been with the citizen in regards to the concerns that you've expressed?
That the house needs to be brought into code compliance. The level of deficiency in this structure is too much for us to detail every little thing in a report. So we said, you need a structural engineering report. The siding needs to be repaired. But, you know, again, the International Property Maintenance Code is not the new construction standards. This is how you maintain existing buildings. And there's no indication that patching the existing siding, which has probably been there 60 or more years, based on the research that our inspector did, is going to make the house watertight and keep moisture from getting in. So again, you have, the other thing we don't know based on that is the framing rotted? Is the wood, we don't know that because we have not seen beneath the siding, but what we know is that the siding is not watertight, and that putting an asphalt shingle over top of a hole in siding that's not watertight does not make it watertight. And that, you know, if you remember the PowerPoint presentation, the windowsill in the attic, there was rotting wood due to moisture. So we know enough to know that using that existing material and just patching it is simply a cosmetic fix and will not bring it to code. And to the point that even in the proposal presented by Bulldog, there's two things. One, cosmetically replace any exposed areas of exterior single siding with shingles. Cosmetically. He doesn't say that it's going to improve the siding's function. He says simply to cosmetically replace shingles. And then he indicates this project comes with no warranty and is not guaranteed to pass any inspections. So, you know, that leads me to believe that he can't conclusively say that performing the work that he has indicated he could perform will bring the property to minimum code standards. He did call me and ask me some questions, and I sent him the pages out of the International Property Maintenance Code that addressed the pieces I just read to you, that address the issues of the exterior walls and weather tight and watertight. So, but that was after the scope was turned in.
Councilman Hare.
So basically, what we've got is they can spend $7,700 to do this work, then we go in and inspect it, and if it doesn't pass, then it doesn't pass. They've just wasted $7,700.
That-
Correct?
That's my concern.
So, it's that, I guess if they want to spend the $7,700 to do something to a house that won't pass inspection, I mean, and just delay it, I mean, it's, because like you said, the foundation, the burnt rotten wood, and everything else that's going on, it's not really going to go in, because our inspectors have looked at it. Do we have a list of what we think needs to be done?
We didn't get to that level of detail because we said that the exterior siding needs to be,
Replaced?
you know, I don't have it in front of me.
Right, yeah.
It's in the folder,
That's
but
fine.
we point out the areas that need it. But again, it's something, you know, we've said from the beginning, you need to get a contractor to tell
Well,
you
the
what.
biggest, I think the biggest thing on the house is the foundation okay? Nobody knows that, right?
I mean, again, the structural report points to some deficiencies in the foundation and how to repair it. Part of the concern of the inspector is that the scope of work is significantly more based on the inspection, or based on the proposals, is significantly more than what's addressed in the structural engineer's report. So it's almost like you have two contractors and a structural engineer, and when you put all the pieces together, they don't fit.
Okay.
Councilman Hutchison.
Anne Marie, have you personally had any conversation with the owner of said property since you got this?
I have not. Our code enforcement supervisor has.
Okay, well, the only thing, you, your staff, someone, but I would hope that we would at least express our deep concern about the issues and concerns that you have and that you raise regarding the difference pertaining to the contract.
I know he did talk to her about that last week. And I asked him to share the email as well.
What is the pleasure of council? Councilman Neal.
Question, if we basically say that we're going to condemn this building to have it down, how long do they have in order to do that?
Okay, so the staff recommendation last time, so it would need to be somewhat modified, was that city council declare the building dangerous and order that it be demolished, not allow repair. Order that it be demolished and set 30 days. So we had said by January 9th, so we would say now February 11th. And then that we would work with the solicitor to recover the cost of the demolition through a lien.
So if we move to have the house demolished and they came back within the 30 days saying, having to take a look at everything, could that be reversed?
No. If your motion is to require the demolition, then it's the demolition. If you want to allow time for repair, then you would need to set a time for repair. Obviously, it's not going to be repaired in 30 days. So, you know, you'd need to figure out, you know, the concern I have, and I've expressed this before, and this is why we've changed the way we do our recommendations, is we have a number of houses out there now that have been to council, they were declared dangerous. You have a property owner that's invested some money, not enough to really bring it to code, and so we're kind of straddling, you know, we have a couple of them where when the building permits expire, even though they may have spent thousands of dollars, we're going to proceed with demolition, which is worse than saying at the outset, you know, we know that this is so far gone that we're just going to recommend that it be demolished, because it really puts us in a position of, you know, in 30 days, 60 days, 90 days, 180 days, whatever it is, at that point, they've invested significant amounts of money, and it's still not where it needs to be. And then we're left with potentially demolishing something that has received that level of investment.
Well, I'm going to move that it be demolished.
Second.
Been moved by Councilman Neal and seconded by Councilman Hosfeld that the property, if I understand the motion, is to accept the original staff recommendation and declare the property dangerous and order it demolished within 30 days. Is that fair?
Do I not have a say in this matter?
Give me 1 second. Give me 1 second. Does that clarify your motion, Councilman Neal?
Yes, sir.
We have a second. All right. There is not a public hearing scheduled for this matter at this time. No. Let me ask council what their pleasure is right now. It's up to you.
I have no problem with
do you want to
someone
suspend the
wishing to speak.
rules and allow for the property owner to speak?
So moved.
Second.
It's been moved by Councilman Neal, seconded by Councilman Anderson. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
If I may, give you a letter I prepared for you. Is that okay? Sure. Mr. Koenig, would you please give that to the president? Thank you. Although things look like they're not going in my favor, but I still like to say thank you for the extension.
Do you want me to read this record?
Go ahead.
Record?
Yes, sir, please.
This is
Thank
dated
you.
January the 8th. Has it been sent previously to council before this evening?
No, sir.
It's to City Council members and Mayor of Dover. Dear City Council members and Mayor, I'd like to first say thank you for the 15-day extension allotted, which has allowed me to provide you with the following information. As I spoke with the City Council last month, I have been successful with obtaining a general contractor for 2 South Queen Street, and have already completed Phase 1 for addressing electrical hazards and violations cited in the Code Enforcement Officer's report. The total cost of all repairs, according to the estimate provided to me by J&C Builders, will not exceed $8,000, which I am financially capable of covering. It is my intent to cure all of the defective conditions cited in the Code Enforcement report first, and replace the asphalt siding with modern siding to improve the exterior decor. Also, for your review, I have the engineer's report, which the general contractor will use as specifications for reinforcing or adjusting any area of the unit that needs to be adjusted or addressed. As stated earlier, I thank you for your patience, and now I'm ready to proceed with bringing 2 South Queen Street up to city code upon council's approval. I'll leave this with the clerk, which will enter this part of the record.
Okay, I'd also like to add, when this inspection was done on the 5th, I got notice on the 10th that all these items need to be completed. In the first place, it wasn't sufficient amount of time to remedy all of these issues, in addition to having the inspection done, having the structural report done. 7 days was an unreasonable amount of time. I did put in writing to Ms. Townsend requesting for a more reasonable amount of time. I recognized that, they expressed to me over the telephone that they felt Bulldog was not qualified to do the repairs. I had to go with whoever was available during the time. They were not my first choice of contractor, but considering the short amount of notice, the holidays, a lot of contractors were out on vacation. Anyway, as she stated earlier, I did submit another proposal from another contractor who is very good at his job, J&C Builders, but I noticed her presentation to you all was focusing on the Bulldog proposal. I'm not going with Bulldog. And J&C Builders, they do in fact address repairing the foundation work and any other necessary work that is found that needs to be done. They do in fact address doing the siding on the side of the house. And, I mean, there was conversation, she was talking about the mold, issue of mold. Okay, I don't know whether she's a qualified mold specialist or what have you, but what was it, she's relating to one area of the house where the pipes leaked at one time. Mind you, I've not owned this house a year, gentlemen. I've not been afforded the opportunity to bring it up to code. What she is referring to was water, not mold, water stains that are on the drywall. So I've not been given the opportunity to bring the house up to code. And thank you.
Question?
Councilman Anderson.
Thank you, Mr. President. Now, there is a question about whether foundation issues were discussed, but isn't part of the scope of work in the other contract that you addressed, quote, new pier foundation to be poured with solid concrete and pinned to bedrock in same dimensions as existing, and other such items. Isn't that part of the scope of work of the second estimate?
Yes, it is, sir.
So, so what you're looking at is a comprehensive approach, and do you feel that not allowing, which has been typically done for decades, repair or demolish, not giving you that opportunity would really be an unnecessary infringement on your fundamental property rights?
I believe it would be, and in fact, I'm sure it would cost more to demolish this house than it would for me to repair it.
Thank you.
Thank you. Councilman Hare.
There's a company called Mold Master, too. You could have them come, they'll do an inspection of the house.
Sir, I'm very familiar with Mold Master.
Is there anyone living in the house?
No, there is no one living in the house. There's no one living in the house. And the guy that you referenced, somebody coming out of there, he cleans the property for me, and he keeps an eye on the property for me because I don't want anybody in the house.
Thank you. The motion that's before us is declare the building dangerous and order demolished within 30 days. Is there any further discussion on the motion? Councilman Anderson.
Yes, Mr. President, I move to add the time-honored language, which has always been part of these discussions, and that add the words repair, to insert the word repair with this, and also amend to a time of 90 days. Repair or demolish.
Can it be amended? Can he amend it?
Well, if there's a second to the amendment.
It's a motion to amend the original motion to add the term repair and to change the time frame from 30 days to 90 days. Is that correct?
That is correct, Mr. President.
Is there a second to the motion?
I'll second it.
Motion's been made by Councilman Anderson, seconded by Councilman Lewis. Is there any further discussion on the amendment to the motion? The amendment, again, would add the words repair and change the time frame to 90 days. Councilman Neal.
I'm going to just note the fact that, as Ms. Townsend has indicated, money can be spent, and this building could also be torn down if it does not reach code. So with that, I'm prepared to vote.
Any further discussion? This is on the amendment. Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Mr. Anderson?
Yes.
Mr. Sudler?
No, I'm confused, I'm sorry.
Mr. Neal?
No.
Mr. Lewis?
Yes.
Mr. Cole?
No.
Mr. Hosfeld?
No.
Mr. Hare?
Yes.
Mr. Hutchison?
No.
Mr. Slavin?
No. The motion to amend the motion fails 3-5. Now we go to the original motion, which is to declare the building dangerous and order it demolished within 30 days. Any further discussion on the motion? Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Mr. Anderson?
No.
Mr. Neal?
Yes.
Mr. Lewis?
No.
Mr. Mr. Pohl?
Yes.
Mr. Husfeld?
Yes.
Mr. Hare?
No.
Mr. Hutchison?
Yes.
Mr. Slavin?
Yes, motion passes 5-3. We now have an item that Councilman Lewis had asked to be pulled off of the consent agenda. That is item 12A, the Legislative Finance and Administration Committee Report of December 19th, 2015. Item A, the pilot take-home vehicle and carryover program. The Chair of the committee would like to explain the issue before Councilman Lewis.
What this was, we have 5 police cars, marked police cars, and Chief Burnett, feel free to jump in anytime you think I'm not correct. We have 5 marked police cars that are targeted for, basically, we would be selling them to get rid of. The value of the police cars is very minimal, but it was deemed that it would, for the officers that live in the city to drive one home, it's parked in their driveway or in front of their house. The community, people see that, it looks, it has a sense of security, and then they drive it back to work the next day. They don't drive it around, they don't drive it for personal use, and then they bring it back home, back to work the next day, and they take a regular police car. But it's just there to kind of help. It's like community policing, only the car's doing it. And it's not a bad, we felt it wasn't a bad idea. If the cars were worth $15,000 a piece or something, then it might be some, but all 5 of them probably aren't worth $15,000. I think it was $10,000 or something.
Councilman Lewis?
Well, that was pretty much my question. As far as cost measures, how will it save in tax dollars?
It's given us extra coverage out there. Like Councilman Hare said, there's two officers actually now that are bringing them home. And then there's another 3 cars that are left over. And what we're doing is we're putting them in high areas of shopliftings. I don't want to really say the places, but we put them in front of their businesses. Also speed enforcement areas where there's a lot of nuisance speeding or stop sign violations. We'll put them in the neighborhoods like that. And also to deter burglaries as well. So
the vehicles really aren't being utilized for regular police
they're not.
duties or work?
No, like Councilman Hare said, the last 5 we had averaged about $1,500 a piece is what they were bringing in.
$1,500 a piece?
Yes, sir.
So it wouldn't behoove the city to sell them as far as bringing in income?
No, I think you're going to get more bang for your buck by putting them out there and giving the illusion of having a bigger police force than what you have.
Are there any liabilities to doing that?
No more than what we already
Cop brings the car
have.
home to his house, and let's say his kid jumps in the car and drives it around, or the car's vandalized.
That could happen.
What are the liabilities,
I hate to be the kid that way.
Yeah, I mean,
That's
right.
right.
I read about it.
It can
It's a
happen.
possibility. I mean, that was basically my question with regard to the matter. I wanted to know what the purpose was. That was explained to me by Councilman Hare just now. How would it benefit the city? And, what are the cost measures, if any? I have no objection, really.
Thank you, Councilman Lewis. No further objection, I'll entertain a motion.
One more comment. There's not any significant equipment that is left in the cars either. It's basically a stripped-down car.
Okay, so I'll entertain a motion to accept the pilot take-home vehicle carryover program that was discussed.
So moved.
By Councilman Anderson, seconded by
Second.
Councilman Lewis. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion carries unanimously. And now I'll entertain a motion to accept the report of Legislative Finance and Administration Committee for
moved.
December 4th.
Second.
Moved by Councilman Hare and seconded by Councilman Anderson. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion carries unanimously. Item number 13 is Legislative Finance and Administration Committee Report from January the 11th, 2016. Except for the following time-sensitive issue, the Legislative Finance and Administration Committee report from earlier this evening will be presented to council during the regular meeting of January 25th for council's review and consideration. Item A is the City of Dover proposal for usage of bank settlement funds for public safety. I'd request Councilman Hare, the chair of the Legislative Finance and Administration Committee, to brief us on this item.
What this was, I guess it was money that was from the bank, whatever, but it was like $576,000 that we got our portion of. And Chief Burnett had broken down what that money would be used for. A certain amount was used to continue the cadet program, which was supposed to end in February. It'll continue now, if it's approved with this money, from February through February of next year at no cost to the city, because thanks to this. Then there's another 300 and some thousand that will be used for extra, or Chief, you've got it, everything.
Do you want me to give the whole rundown?
I mean, if you
Chief,
want.
could you fill in the blanks where Mr.
Yeah.
Harris, the referee,
200
failed him?
Another $275,000 for overtime uniform foot patrols for a year, and that comes out to be about 4,800 hours worth. That's enough for two-man teams for 5 days a week, 52 weeks. $170,000 for 14 additional downtown cameras and upgrades, and another $4,000 to fix the Kirkwood Street basketball lights so they work, and also include a timer to turn off whenever we deem necessary. And an additional $25,000 for community events, for food, DJs, entertainment, and things of that nature. And that pretty much covers it.
Questions for Mr. Councilman Neal?
Is this money replacing money that's in the budget, or was this not money in the budget?
No, this was from the bank settlements, from the state bank settlements, from where the banks were fined, and the AG's office went after the money. The state got $30 million, or received $30 million. Attorney General Matt Dehn asked for $2 million to be split between Wilmington and Dover, and we received $579,569.
Okay, so
and
this money
it's a
was
one-time.
not in the budget to begin with, and this is additional funds that would save money in the future?
Correct.
I
This is
hope.
a one-time
Fingers
thing.
crossed.
Well, it gives us more police coverage, and it gives us more camera coverage, and it gives us money, discretionary money to bring the community together, which is what we need.
Thank you, Chief.
Other questions? What is the pleasure of council?
There are questions.
I'm sorry, Councilman
I was
Sutherland.
going to make a motion.
Councilman Sutherland?
A motion to accept Legislative Finance Administration Committee's recommendation. Second.
Been moved by Councilman Sutherland, seconded by Councilman Hare to accept the recommendation of the Legislative Finance and Administration Committee on the usage of the bank settlement funds for public safety. Is there any further discussion? Councilman Anderson.
I just wanted to say thank you for leading on this. You're providing leadership for the entire state, Chief, and I won't repeat everything I said earlier, but most people don't know what was said earlier. What is being done here is necessary to build the community and make it safer, and I want to thank you and the mayor and the attorney general for taking the lead and making sure this happened.
Right. And Senator Bushweller played a big role in helping us secure these funds as well, as well as Matt Dehn.
Any further discussion? Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Mr. Anderson?
Yes.
Mr. Sutherland?
Yes.
Mr. Neal?
Yes.
Mr. Lewis?
Yes.
Mr. Pohl?
Yes.
Mr. Hosfeld?
Yes.
Mr. Hare?
Yes.
Mr. Hutchison?
Yes.
Mr. Slavin?
Yes, motion carries 9-0. Item 15A is evaluation of bids for the directional boring contract. Mr. Koenig, would you please brief us on this item?
Thank you, Mr. Slavin. In the packet is an action form from the electric department regarding, in some cases, a series of blanket contracts that we award to support both capital projects as well as maintenance operations when necessary. This was a time and materials contract that was put out using the city's contract and procurement manager. The city received 3 bids. They ran it through a pricing scenario that would be typical for this type of work. The low bidder for the work is Joseph R. Smith Incorporated. Our staff is requesting that we enter into award a 3-year blanket directional boring contract with no minimum amounts per year, with an option to extend for 2 additional years per the pricing that was included with the submittal. As I said, there are no minimum spends each year, but staff has indicated that we could be spending as much as $200,000 annually on this contract. And the work under time and materials is to support both capital projects, any types of failures of existing systems, or any other support necessary to maintain the system. I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Questions for Mr. Koenig? It's the pleasure of council.
Move to accept staff's recommendation.
Second.
Been moved by Councilman Hosfeld, seconded by Councilman Neal to accept staff recommendation. Any discussion on the matter? Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Mr. Anderson?
Yes.
Mr. Sedler?
Yes.
Mr. Neal?
Yes.
Mr. Lewis?
Yes.
Mr. Cole?
Yes.
Mr. Hosfeld?
Yes.
Mr. Hare?
Yes.
Mr. Hutchison?
Yes.
Mr. Slavin?
Yes, motion carries 9-0. Item 15B, evaluation of bids for the fiber optic system maintenance contract. Mr. Koenig.
Thank you again. This is another item that has come out of the electric department, but the work does support both electric and public works operations and has to do with the maintenance of the fiber optic system to include splicing, terminating, and supplying and installing related equipment. It is, again, a time and materials contract. We put out an advertisement for services, and only one bid was received from KCI Communications, which is our current contractor. And staff is recommending the award of a 3-year contract for fiber optic system maintenance to KCI Communications Infrastructure based on their pricing submittals. It is anticipated that the expenses will exceed $25,000 per year. Happy to answer any questions.
Questions for Mr. Koenig? It's the pleasure of council.
Move, we follow the recommendation of the staff.
Second.
Been moved by Councilman Neal, seconded by Councilman Anderson to accept staff recommendation on the bids for the fiber optic system maintenance contract. Any further discussion? Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Mr. Anderson?
Yes.
Mr. Sedler?
Yes.
Mr. Neal?
Yes.
Mr. Lewis?
Yes.
Mr. Cole?
Yes.
Mr. Hosfeld?
Yes.
Mr. Hare?
Yes.
Mr. Hutchison?
Yes.
Mr. Slavin?
Yes, motion carries 9-0. Item 15C, evaluation of bids for landscaping services contract. Mr. Koenig.
Thank you. This is another routine contract coming out of the electric department, which they have labeled as a landscaping services contract. This is to support city's efforts to improve projects and clean up the private property after disturbed yards and/or landscaped areas related to the replacement of facilities, construction of facilities. Again, they run it through a bid scenario pricing scheme. Staff submitted or solicited bids from 4 companies, only 2 responded, and based on the pricing scenario, staff is recommending to use Joseph R. Smith Incorporated for a 3-year contract based on time and materials with potential for a 2-year option to extend. The estimated amount of work will exceed $25,000 per year, but it's based on the number of projects and/or emergencies necessary to maintain or improve the system. Happy to answer any questions.
Questions for Mr. Koenig?
Question.
Mr. Hare.
It says the estimated work will exceed $25,000 a year.
Yes.
Okay, will it exceed by 100,000, 50? I mean, do we have an exceeding point where we gotta say, wait a minute, okay, I've gotta come back and get, because if he comes in and says, oh yeah, I'm gonna do it, and it's gonna cost, now it's 100,000. I mean, where?
So again, it's on time and materials based on the number of jobs that are necessary to repair. 1 year it could be 10 jobs, 1 year it could be 30 jobs, but the amount of money associated with the repair should never exceed the amount of the total budget for either capital or maintenance projects. So each project, say for example, we were dropping overhead lines underground in a subdivision, there are various time and materials contracts that are associated with that. You have boring, you have the connection of lines, and then you have the yard repairs. So the total project may be $100,000, could be $50,000 worth of boring, could be $10,000 worth of yard repairs. So the purpose of this request is to get council to authorize this vendor for that type of work with the notification that we will likely be spending more than $25,000 a year on this type of work with that.
I have no problem with that. It's just, when it says more than 25,000,
Estimate.
I mean, is it more than 25 but less than 50?
I did not bring those numbers with me tonight.
Okay, that's my only concern is at what point do we kind of put a cap on it so we can review it?
It's capped by the budget.
I know that, but there's ways of changing that. So that's my only concern is more, when I hear more than, but I like to have a more than but less than, and then if we have to approve more than the, say, 40,000 or, if it's 25% or 30% over the estimate, then we need to come back and say, okay, yeah, we can go with it. That's my only concern.
I just like to interject. I concur with Mr. Hare. It also concerns me giving this person that much authorization to just, if it has to be increased, just go ahead without council's approval.
I think we can limit it to, I would say, $100,000 a year, if that's council's concern.
It's a pleasure of council.
Would it be beneficial to table this item until the next session, where you have the figures that you could present to us, and then we could amend that item with the max?
Are you asking me a question?
Yes.
Do I think it would be beneficial?
Yes.
I think this is a routine contract, and I can bring you numbers back next time, but I don't think it's not going to change our recommendation. It's still going to be to approve a contract that will spend $25,000 or more a year.
Councilman Anderson.
Thank you. Mr. Koenig, maybe there may be, could you answer the question in this way, please? Now, when we approve these projects, there is a budgeted amount. Is that correct for the projects? And the budgeted amount includes the landscaping, and that we've already approved, and all we're doing is getting a vendor to actually do the work that we've already approved. And it's just that you're notifying us that it's coming under certain bidding rules because that cumulative work is going to exceed $25,000. Is that what you're saying?
That's correct. In the budget, there are a number of projects and/or system upgrades that are outlined in the budget document. And each of those projects is broken down into various work components, and these blanket contracts support those various work components. So in FY16, we may do $23,000 worth of landscaping work. In FY17, we may do $45,000 worth of landscaping work. In FY18, it could be $80,000, depending on what's required to finish the projects. So the only thing I could give you is the spending on past projects at this point.
A second question on that is, so basically, as I'm understanding, and please correct me if I'm wrong, this is basically all we're doing is finding the lowest bidder to do the work that we've already approved. And so it's not a matter of spending outside of the budgeted items, but just a matter of finding the lowest bidder to actually perform this work within the budget. Is that correct?
I would agree with that statement.
Okay.
Other questions, Mr. Koenig?
So we already know how much money has been budgeted.
Yes.
So then really, we just need to know what the budgeted amount is. And that's what it's already been approved, right?
You know what the total budget is.
The total budgeted amount that we're authorizing this bidder to do the work for.
No, we know what the total project budget is, Mr. Hare. I don't know whether it's, based on this information, if you look at your electric report, there may be 25 projects on that report. 20 of them may need some type of landscaping service. 5 of them may not need anything.
But the budgeted amount for the project, say it's $100,000.
Right?
We won't be going over that without council approval.
No. Unless, phrase that. We're allowed to amend project budgets up to certain amounts administratively under my authorization.
Up to a certain amount.
Up to a certain amount. If I have to exceed that amount, I have to come back to council.
Okay, so, okay, that kind of explains a little better. That way it's in the budget, okay.
What's the pleasure of council?
Move to accept staff recommendation.
Second.
Second.
It's moved by Councilman Hosfeld, seconded by Councilman Anderson to accept staff recommendation. Is there any further discussion? Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Mr. Anderson?
Yes.
Mr. Sedler?
Yes.
Mr. Neal?
Yes.
Mr. Lewis?
Yes.
Mr. Cole?
Yes.
Mr. Hosfeld?
Yes.
Mr. Hare? Mr. Hutchison?
Yes.
Yes, motion carries 9-0. Item 15D, evaluation of bids, retreat pump station replacement. Mr. Koenig.
Thank you again, Mr. Slavin. This is a bid package coming out of the Department of Public Works. We're proposing to replace the wastewater pumping station in the Retreat subdivision that was installed in 1980. It is performed past its estimated service life, and the pump station is currently located on Pine Valley Road east of Medina Court. The replacement will improve the system by expanding the flow capacity, structural integrity, as well as the pump efficiencies at the station. This project was originally bid in October of 2015. We received one bid from Brandywine Construction Company that was approximately $450,000, which was roughly $100,000 over budget, including the paving of the area, the driveway into the station. The bids were rejected. We then re-advertised and again went through the purchasing agent. Second rounds of bids were opened on December 17th of this year. Again, we received one bid from Brandywine Construction Company at roughly $90,000 over budget. We are proposing to move forward with a base bid of $440,000 plus the alternative paving option for a total cost of $447,500. The bid received from Brandywine Construction met all of the specifications and requirements as well as qualifications for the project. And since we've bid it out twice and both times come in over budget, we're requesting to move money from the inflow infiltration project to balance the Retreat pump station project budget and proceed with construction, because the pump station replacement is a higher priority at the moment than pending I&I projects. Staff is recommending the award of the contract to the Brandywine Construction Company Incorporated for the Retreat pump station replacement in the amount of $447,500. I'll be happy to answer any other questions.
Questions for Mr. Koenig? What's the pleasure of council? Sorry, Mr. Anderson.
Thank you. I have a question about what are we losing with taking this money from I&I? Will this impact our permits or with DNREC?
The only thing that we're losing is there's a certain amount of pipe that would not be able to be replaced under the I&I project. So the chances are there's some I&I happening at the pump station right now, just because of the deterioration of the pump station. But the only thing we're foregoing is that amount of money being dedicated to underground pipe replacement. As far as DNREC is concerned, I&I functions as a system burden. It is not a violation of any permit or anything like that. It does create additional flow for us to Kent County, so there is a cost associated with the treatment in Kent County, and that cost is recovered under the I&I component of our monthly bill. So It is detracting from our ability to replace pipe, but in the hierarchy of needs, the pump station replacement is a higher need than the pipe replacement at the moment.
So do you know why we were so far off in the original estimates?
I don't know specifically what the change or what was driving the budget on this one. We bid, I think on the last few years, we've bid at least 1 or 2 pump stations each year. This one came in higher than the others, kind of unexpectedly, I would say. And the fact that we only got 1 bid on this project is a little bit of a concern. But the fact that we bid it twice and only got 1 bid tells us that the activity level outside for this type of work is fairly robust because those contractors were notified of the bid and chose not to.
Thank you.
Other questions for Mr. Koenig? It's a pleasure of council.
Move to accept the recommendation of staff.
Second.
Moved by Councilman Neal, seconded by Councilman Anderson to accept staff recommendation on the retreat pump station replacement bid. Any further discussion? Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Mr. Anderson?
Yes.
Mr. Sedler?
Yes.
Mr. Neal?
Yes.
Mr. Lewis?
Yes.
Mr. Cole?
Yes.
Mr. Hosfeld?
Yes.
Mr. Hare?
Yes.
Mr. Hutchison?
Yes.
Mr. Slade?
Yes, motion carries 9-0. 15-E, evaluation of bids underground line work. Mr. Koenig.
Thank you. This is the final of the time and materials contract for tonight. This is for underground line work, both in emergency situations and as required. Bids were solicited by the city's procurement manager after being prepared by the electric department. Received bids from 4 companies. All the bids were complete as submitted. They ran it through a labor pricing scenario, and Joseph R. Smith was the lowest cost provider based on the pricing scenario. Staff is recommending awarding the blanket underground line work services contract to Joseph R. Smith Incorporated for 3 years, with an option for 2 additional years. There are no minimum requirements for using this service. We do estimate that the cost of these services will exceed $25,000 per year. That's why we are before council requesting the authorization.
Questions for Mr. Koenig? Pleasure of council.
So moved. Recommendation of the staff.
Second.
By Councilman Neal, seconded by Councilman Poole to accept staff recommendation. Is there any further discussion? Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Mr. Anderson?
Yes.
Mr. Sedler?
Yes.
Mr. Neal?
Yes.
Mr. Lewis?
Yes.
Mr. Cole?
Yes.
Mr. Hosfeld?
Yes.
Mr. Hare?
Yes.
Mr. Hutchison?
Yes.
Yes, motion carries 9-0. Item 16 is ratification of action, early closing on December 24th, 2015. Mr. Koenig, would you please brief us on this item?
Thank you. The week of Christmas, we had anticipated council potentially authorizing an early closing at their last meeting in December, or their first meeting in December, I'm sorry. Due to the circumstances surrounding that meeting, that did not happen. Both the mayor and I discussed a potential early closing of the city, and the reason that it was discussed between the mayor and myself was because as the chief administrative officer, I controlled the regular city buildings, and as the chief executive officer, the police department reports to the mayor. We had conversed with several people and recommended an early closing of city offices at noon on Christmas Eve. This was kind of a follow-up to the fact that I believe the federal government closed early that day, and also state government had issued a holiday on that day. The terminology that the city used was an early closing, so that we did not set a precedent regarding a holiday on December 24th. And the request is that council would ratify that action tonight so that we have it administratively on the record as to why we did the closing and how we had informed council of it. I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Mr. Koenig, just the state had given December 24th off. Previously, it was unplanned. That was supposed to be a work day, and late in the week, they decided they would do that. So
Yes.
Any questions for Mr. Koenig? It's a pleasure of council. Councilman Anderson?
So moved.
Second for discussion.
Councilman Neal made the motion, Councilman Anderson seconded. Councilman Anderson?
Mr. President, I have been concerned before that of this, of potentially of Holiday Creek. If we're going to make it, then it should be in the contracts and it should be negotiated. It's a concern I've had before. I continue to have it and I plan to vote no.
Other comments, questions? Councilman Sutler?
Does that have any bearing with the negotiation of what Mr. Anderson, Councilman Anderson had just brought? Is there going to be any type of repercussion, or is that going to be an issue with bargaining or non-bargaining employees?
Mr. Koenig?
Mr. Sudler, we specifically did not call this a holiday because we did not want to get into the contractual issues associated with the discussion of holidays or non-holidays. We termed it as an early closing, and it was similar to anything else where if we were having a problem, we had to close a building early. If we had a weather emergency where we closed early, we called it an early closing related to administrative matters.
So just for clarity, so what we'll be voting on is just an early closing for now on April 24th? Is that what I'm hearing?
We're just ratifying the action that was taken.
Oh, okay, thank you.
So that we have an administrative record of what occurred.
Okay, thank you for the clarity.
Councilman Hare?
Just to follow up, it was Christmas Eve. Closing early at noon, it's not a big deal. It's not affecting the union contracts. I mean, maybe Scrooge or Councilman Anderson has an issue with it. I don't know, but, you know, I guess we could be the Scrooge Council and not ratify it, but, you know, it's just a Christmas. Yeah,
It's coming from Santa Claus there, too.
everybody got home early, so I didn't have to work so hard.
Councilman Lewis?
It was, what time was everybody dismissed? Noon time?
Noon.
Okay,
Yes.
so it's 4 hours.
Any other questions or comments? Motion was made to ratify this. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
No.
Motion carries 8. Item 17 is authorization to create a business retention rate schedule. Mr. Koenig is going to brief us on this item. I would remind council members that some of the items that were discussed about this in executive session, we cannot disclose in public session. So I would just ask you to be careful with your comments. Mr. Koenig.
Thank you, Mr. Slavin. As I indicated previously, we have been discussing the potential creation of a business retention / economic development rate. This rate was worked on by our rate consultant, Burns & McDonnell, for several months to figure out whether we could propose this rate. In the packet tonight is the proposed rate schedule. The purpose of the rate schedule is to allow qualified customers to receive a reduced electric rate for a limited 2-year period when serious threats to business are apparent and opportunities to maintain employment and potentially increase employment can be demonstrated by the entity requesting the rate. A copy of the draft schedule is in the exhibit tonight, and as we had indicated previously, this is very tailored business retention rate. They have to have a load of at least 5 megawatts, and only 10 megawatts in the entire system can qualify for this rate at one time. The rate would be for a single 2-year term, and we estimate that this incentive, the estimated economic value of the incentive would be between $700,000 and $800,000 over a 2-year period, depending upon the actual electrical consumption. As I indicated, this has been submitted as draft in the packet. If council approves it, the draft watermark will be removed, and there is one change to page 204 where there's a red strikeout of electric department and the city manager's position is inserted there. Staff is recommending the authorization of this rate as we believe it will be an important recruitment for business development. I'd be be happy to answer any questions.
Questions for Mr. Koenig? What's the pleasure of council?
Move to accept the recommendation.
Second.
Moved by Councilman Hare and seconded by Councilman Hutchison to accept the staff recommendation creating a business retention rate schedule. Is there any further discussion? Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Mr. Anderson?
Yes.
Mr. Sudler?
Yes.
Mr. Neal?
Yes.
Mr. Lewis?
Yes.
Mr. Cole?
Yes.
Mr. Husfeld?
Yes.
Mr. Hare?
Yes.
Mr. Hutchison?
Yes.
Mr. Slade?
Yes, motion carries 9-0. Item 21 is council member announcements. Two quick announcements. I wanted to congratulate Ms. Wanda Jean Mullen from the 3rd District, who has earlier this evening been appointed to the Dover Human Relations Commission. We thank her for accepting that position. And I would also like to extend my thanks publicly, and I would ask the city manager to extend them as well, to the electric crew workers last night who had to deal with a very large outage in part of the city that lasted almost 12 hours. If you want to see dedicated public servants, go out and see the men and women who were working that issue last night, beginning at 6:30 p.m. and finishing about 6:30 this morning. It was impressive that they were able to get that work done. I and my constituents in the area appreciate it. Any council member announcements? Councilman Anderson.
Thank you. I'd like to thank the Dover Police Department for putting an end to the one-man robbery crime spree with their very quick response. It was quite an impressive response. You hardly had time to walk away. And that has to do with the very quick response, which is the best in the state that Dover Police has. Thank you for that. And I'd also like to save the date for the fourth Saturday in February, which will be the annual chili cook-off, which will benefit a local charity or two. That you'll hear more from that. It looks like one of the charities this year will be Veterans Outreach, and look forward to that. And you'll hear more about that as time comes a little closer.
Councilman Sudler.
I just wanted to remind everyone of the Martin Luther King Prayer Breakfast that the Alpha Phi Alpha Fraternity Incorporated will be hosting at Modern Maturity Center at 7 a.m. on the 18th of January, 2016.
Thank you, Councilman. Other council members' announcements. I will entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
By Councilman Harris, seconded by Councilman Cole. He had that look about him. All in favor signify by saying aye. Stand adjourned.